Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so we got to talk about it. A prepper's garden is absolutely different than a regular garden, like a hobbyist or something like that, and that's cool. That's the way it's supposed to be. Do a lot of things in a garden, and there are a lot of similarities between the two. I mean, in the end of the day, all we're doing is growing food. Okay, so let's not overcomplicate it too much. Wink, nudge, nudge, coming soon. But there is an absolute difference, and it's a mindset that if it's something you're really concerned about, we absolutely need to work that into our, I guess psyche is the word, I don't know. You pick whatever word you want. Grand scheme of things though, there's a lot of similarities. I mean, take for instance these black-eyed peas, which are, I mean, we're having this crazy heat wave right now. It was 98 yesterday and it's going to be 98 again today, and it's just going to keep getting hotter and hotter. But these black-eyed peas are loving this heat, and this is what I do to ensure, because they get so crazy as I have to weave them in to get them to grow over. But this is part of my plan, is factoring in heat-loving crops so they can continue to produce. Now the similarity between the two is, either way you want production, right? I mean, that's just the fact of it. We're not gardening for the hell of it. We all want some kind of production from our garden. As a prepper, survivalist, whatever you want to call yourself, it's more about quantity of production, right? So we want to get enough out of our spaces, and you can't bend the will of the garden to what you want. You have to find this happy medium between the two, right? So there are going to be periods like this, like we are in the hottest time of the summer right now. It's basically miserable. Plants are starting to struggle. The garden is starting to empty out. But what a lot of people don't realize is on the back end, there's a whole nother garden being grown, getting ready to come out. And that's what we want. So we don't use, and so let me say this right off the bat. Prepper, survivalist, whatever, I kind of fall like in the middle of everything, I guess. I always grow my food to feed my family and to say, hey, if we had to survive off of it, we could. That was the whole reason why we started. But in the grand scheme of things, I kind of fall now like all over the place, and I don't really consider myself in any camp, which is kind of how I've always lived my life, which has made it difficult, but whatever. So one thing we have to understand is the frost date is not the end of our garden. As a matter of fact, it's really like the beginning of another gardening season, kind of wrapping up into it, but our first frost date does not mark the end. And I bring this up for a very important reason. The whole video wasn't even really planned. The last one where we talked about surviving out of a garden, like what to grow if there's no food for fall, right? And there's a lot of comments in there about certain crops like bush beans, winter squashes and stuff like that. But what we have to realize is once your first frost comes, they're done, right? Every crop that I mentioned in that video, it just looks at a frost and says, and it's time to grow. And that's one of the major differences here, is you have to step out of that comfort zone of what we've been planting all summer, and everything out here that's like, okay, yeah, we can do this, we can do that, we can keep this going as long as possible. But once you remove those things and you accept, for instance, if you just take this for instance, accept that this bed of squash, I could have absolutely put another bed of squash in, and that was my plan. But we accepted that that would go away. And what we know now is that this bed is basically a clean slate for whatever we want going into fall and into the winter season, which means we are going to boost our production if we plant appropriately 2 times, right? Dramatically boost our production, where we will be getting crops that we would never have an option to get because we made that plan appropriately. And so this is a major difference. So understand that your garden's not going to be perfect the whole time, and that there's going to be times when it's going to die out and you're going to replant it. And it takes a lot of work. So when I first started, we know why I started now at this point, it's abundantly clear, but I started a tomato plant, I bought it, and I wanted that billy goat to grow all through the summer into the fall. And I knew it was gonna die in the winter, but I just wanted it to. And I did that for years and years. But once I broke that mold and I started planting those crops that I put in the last video, the 5 crops, what have you, there was a huge difference in how long I started getting more produce, which raises, if you're concerned about it, your survivability rate. And even if you're not concerned about it, it just raises the rate of consumption and production that you can get out of your garden into an entire another season. That I'm telling you, when you look at your forecast and you're coming out here, for instance, fall tomatoes, which boy, they're struggling in this heat. As soon as it cools off, they'll kick in. But we look at these tomatoes and we will be out here. Hopefully we won't be real nervous about it, but every year it's gonna be the same thing. These are our fall planted tomatoes. They are designed to give us tomatoes in fall, but we're gonna be really worried about if we're gonna get the maximum production out of them, if we've wasted our space and stuff like that, versus we come over here to, I can't remember what's gonna be in here right now. Let's just say that this is gonna be cabbages. That first frost date comes, doesn't even matter. I don't need to do anything for it. I don't need to cover it, nothing. Only reason why I would add cover to it is if it was gonna be like a freak frost and then it was gonna be nice and warm after that, then we may possibly put a cover on it just to like trick it to keep producing at a faster rate. But even still, 9 times out of 10, we don't do that. We just let it grow because it doesn't matter at that point. Every crop that we mentioned on there, and there's going to be more talk of that on this channel, all of them are able to grow into the fall past your first frost date and possibly into the winter, depending on where you are. And we're going to figure all that stuff out. And that's really important. So that is a major difference in the two. And even no matter what camp you sit in, if you want to switch over into another camp, you want to be a bye gardener, let's just call it that, whatever. You could do that and just start understanding and start planting it. And it's a natural progression. At least for me, it was a very natural progression to be rotating my garden out completely into different crops. So like, for instance, we're leaving this corn here. This corn, as of this moment, has produced all the corn it's gonna get. This is the last head of corn, ear of corn. So what we're actually gonna do is we're going to dry this out and then we're gonna save it, but we're gonna go ahead and pull all the stalks out at some point. There's no rush because we're not putting anything in right away. And then we're gonna mulch the bed and we're gonna let it sit for probably about a month before we replant it. So we've got our rutabagas started. They're gonna go in this bed and then we'll come back and we'll drop those plants in the mulch. So you can see like this is part of it. And it seems crazy when you're trying to make a garden to be doing all of this work, but as you march closer and closer to your fall weather into winter, you're gonna start seeing less and less production. And like right now, this heat is really crushing the garden. So you just gotta wait it out and understand, but there is a time for it to improve and you're going to be able to see that, but you've gotta be able to make that switch. Don't hold on to those summer crops as long as possible if you're concerned at anything, because I can tell you this, okay? And answer this below. If you had to have food, there was no food available, would you rather have a handful of peppers to cut up amongst your family? And I don't care if you have 50 pepper plants, doesn't matter to me. And you say, okay, we have this, this, and this, and you're gonna have to freeze it and preserve it and all that. Or would you rather pull a 5-pound head of cabbage out and bring it up and say, hey, we've got food, there's more in the garden, there's no stress, we don't have to preserve it, we don't have to do anything? Or would you rather pull a handful of 50 radishes out, or 20 radishes out and be like, hey, this is what's for dinner tonight, instead of like 1 pepper amongst your family? Like, you make that decision for yourself, but be realistic about what's possible and what you can do. And for me, the other thing one of the other major differences is a lot of this, like my entire garden is centered around preserving. So preserving is a huge part of it, but at the same time, I want to preserve as little as possible. Almost everything that goes in my garden for the most point is meant to preserve to some extent, whether it's canning, freezing, drying, curing, fermenting, whatever. Everything is really meant to do that. I mean, we got, I think we got about 40, yeah, we got about 40 ears of corn off of here. Do you think I'm gonna sit there and gorge myself on 40 ears of corn? Absolutely not. You know, we're gonna get, I hope, we'll see. I never count my eggs before they hatch with sweet potatoes, especially when I change what I do each year. But we're hoping to get about 40 to 50 pounds of sweet potatoes this year. Really hope I don't have to eat my words. But I don't plan to gorge myself on sweet potatoes. We parcel those out for the entire winter into the spring. So we want this to feed us and to keep the nutrition coming in, but we also know that we're not gonna have an endless supply of sweet potatoes. We're gonna run out, but that's why we grow other things, so that we know that by the time we run out of sweet potatoes, we'll have something else coming out of the garden, whether it's our spring cabbages, which are different than our fall cabbages, our carrots, our potatoes, something like that. We will have something else to take the place of that. And that's a really big difference. So for me, it's not all about grow as much as I can and preserve it all and then I never have to worry about it. It's more of grow it, preserve it, use it if you have to, but also know that you're gonna grow it again and this becomes a cycle. This is just a very big cycle that goes over and over. And that's a really big difference between the two. And between those two things, all of those two things tell me, when I think about it, is this goes from a hobbyist garden into a survival type garden. And a lot of people who are hobbyist gardens already think like that. So guess what? You're over halfway there. The third thing, because there are three, is quantity, which I did talk about earlier, I touched on, but quantity is a lot. So instead of focusing on multiple different crops, instead of putting one row of corn in and then one row of squash in front, we wanted to get it all packed into one bed so we could produce more of it. The same over here with all these tomatoes and peppers. So we wanted to put a lot of the same crop in so that we got the quantity that we needed to preserve, right? Not necessarily the variety of it. So we don't do 10 different types of tomatoes, we do 3. We do a cherry, we do a paste, and then we do a slicer. You know, as far as our peppers go, we don't do a whole lot of crazy peppers. Look at that son of a gun. Yeesh. We would normally plant 1 okra, but this year we planted 2 because we get plenty of it, and there we go. Our seeds are ready to save, just like that. So our green velvet okra seed from 2020 has now given us another seed to grow, and we can continue on the lineage. Instead of trying to pack in multiple different things, I mean, you know, when I first started in one bed, I'd have 8, 9 different crops in there. I'd have a squash, I'd have a zucchini, I'd have cucumbers, peppers, and a tomato plant all in one bed. But then I wouldn't really be getting as much as I wanted. So then we had to change the way we gardened, right? So we just changed our design methods and stuff like that. And that's why on this channel, we really focus, and on the Backyard Gardens podcast, which I'm the host of, with my co-host Batavia, we focus a lot on planning and seed starting. Those are very, very important. Obviously methods in the garden, but if you don't have a good plan, it's like painting a wall. It's all in the prep work, right? If you don't fix a hole, it's just gonna get worse, right? Well, it's the same thing here. If you don't plan out your garden, it's just gonna be an uphill battle. And that's not something you wanna do. You wanna make sure you have a solid plan. And all of this can be more to help you survive a situation that you want to live through. Could be whatever, doesn't matter. Doesn't have to be the end of the world. Can be a loss of a job. Could be a family member sick. Something, natural disaster. Could be a many different things. So just think about that. These are the differences between a prepper garden and a regular garden, in my opinion, and how I've, over the years, evolved my gardening to something different. And it doesn't really have to be spoken about all the time, but I've done a couple of videos on this type of subject and you guys really like it. So we'll talk about it more clearly. And I don't plan to do every single video about it, but I felt like with the comments coming in about, you know, the squashes and beans and stuff like that, I wanted to make a point that if you want to survive, you need to garden within your season. And if you're not gardening within your season with the plants you're making, you're leaving a lot on the table. And your survivability, if you watched that one video and you gave yourself a rating, you can take it down a notch. You know, you can take it down a point or a half point, I don't know, whatever. It's all subjective, really. But you can definitely take it down because you're leaving so much on the table as far as what you can grow and what you can harvest that it could hurt you in the long run. Goodbye.